Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Welcome. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer slammed the Trudeau government, saying nothing will be done on Parliament Hill until Ottawa releases the Green Slush Fund documents to the RCMP. Conservative Leader Pierre Poilievre is demanding that Liberal Minister Randy Boissonnault step down. Political reporter Brian Lilly will explain why. And this is the week that thousands of shoeboxes are collected through the Christmas Child campaign to be given out to needy kids around the world.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer says the time has come for the Trudeau government to hand over documents to the RCMP in relation to the Liberals' Green Slush Fund. He says until they do so, not much will be accomplished on Parliament Hill as things have grounded to a halt. Scheer says this is a patterned behaviour with this government, redacting and withholding vital information from Canadians.
And let's remember what this scandal is all about. Liberal-friendly board members, people appointed to the board by Justin Trudeau, funneled tax dollars into their own companies. The Auditor General found $400 million worth of grants misappropriated in this way. Also found over 180 conflicts of interest. And the government has fought transparency on this all along the way. They refused to listen to warnings from whistleblowers. They fought Conservatives' efforts to uncover details about this scandal. And it was only after Conservatives called in the Auditor General that the sordid details of this affair were made known to Canadians. This is also a pattern from this Liberal government. Remember, they've done this before. They've kept documents hidden and redacted key pieces of information with other scandals like the WE organizations. And remember, this is the government that took the Speaker to court to prevent information from being handed over related to the Winnipeg labs. So this is a pattern with this government.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has called for Edmonton MP Randy Boissonnault to resign. There's been some controversy dogging the minister recently, from questions about his business dealings, his company receiving government contracts, and claiming to be Indigenous. Now there's word that Boissonnault has been sharing a post office box with someone busted for cocaine. Political reporter Brian Lilly says Boissonnault has even picked up the nickname Cocaine Randy from the Conservative Party.
During question period, Conservative MP Michael Barrett heckled Boissonnault with the nickname Cocaine Randy, and the Liberals rose on a point of order and said, you can't be calling honourable members that. Mike Barrett stood up and said, Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the other Randy, and sat down. It was a bit of fun for everyone and a laugh, but Boissonnault's been trying to get out of all these claims that he was doing improper business dealings while he was in cabinet by claiming there's another Randy. And there is no other Randy. It's a completely ridiculous story.
Mr. Lilly will also discuss how, according to a recent poll, the federal Conservatives' lead over the Liberals is shrinking. He'll have details coming up later in our broadcast. A new report says administering the carbon tax will cost Canadian taxpayers around $800 million by the year 2030. Now, that's according to government records dug up by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. To talk about this in more detail is Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the CTF, who joins us from Ottawa. Franco, the cost of administering the carbon tax has apparently already cost taxpayers $283 million since it was first implemented back in 2019.
That's correct. The cost of Trudeau's carbon tax bureaucracy has already hit taxpayers for a total of $283 million. And taxpayers are going to be forking over even more money if the carbon tax stays in place, another $500 million or so just to administer it between now and 2030. So in total, the administrative cost to taxpayers for Trudeau's carbon tax will be about $800 million by 2030. And remember, folks, that's just the taxpayer cost to pay for all these additional bureaucrats to hammer you with the carbon tax. So the carbon tax is soaking taxpayers twice. First, it makes the necessities of your life more expensive, like fueling up your car, heating your home, and buying food. And then it costs taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars to hire all these extra bureaucrats that are imposing you with a carbon tax.
And according to the PBO, or the Parliamentary Budget Officer, also known as the government watchdog, the carbon tax itself is expected to cost the average household up to $399 this year, more than the rebates?
The PBO shows that the carbon tax is costing average families hundreds of dollars more than what they're getting back in rebates. And oh, by the way, the federal government also charges its sales tax on top of the carbon tax, right? And this carbon tax on tax alone will cost Canadians $400 million this year alone, and none of that tax on tax money is rebated back to you. So look, it is impossible for a government to impose a carbon tax, skim hundreds of millions of dollars off the top to pay for hundreds of additional tax bureaucrats, then charge its sales tax on top of the carbon tax, and somehow make everyone better off with rebates. That's impossible. The Trudeau government is using magic math. Here's what should happen. Trudeau should make life more affordable and slash Ottawa's ballooning bureaucracy by scrapping the carbon tax.
Thanks so much for your time today, Franco. That was Franco Terrazzano, Federal Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, joining us from Ottawa. Representatives from two public health care lobbying groups are calling on the federal government to do more to protect Medicare from privatization. Melanie Béchard with Canadian Doctors for Medicare says she's worried that even though we have universal health care, some of her patients are having to pay for access, which she says is simply wrong.
Meanwhile, the federal government has proposed a viable solution, but we've been waiting over a year and a half for them to implement it. My colleagues and I were thrilled when, way back in March of 2023, the health minister at the time, Jean-Yves Duclos, announced that he would issue an interpretation letter to clarify the Canada Health Act. Specifically, he stated that the letter would stipulate public funding for nurse practitioner-delivered care and virtual care. The Canada Health Act was first issued back in 1984 when virtual care and nurse practitioners did not have as prominent a role in the healthcare system as they do today. As such, the provinces and territories have dragged their feet on covering these medically necessary services. Depending on the province, there is limited funding for virtual or nurse practitioner care in very specific circumstances only. This gap has resulted in for-profit corporations charging patients for access to virtual care.
A man has been charged with attempted murder after two people were found seriously injured in a village located northwest of Calgary. RCMP say they received a call from someone saying a man was attacking occupants of a home in Cremona. Now, when police arrived, they found an 86-year-old man and a 59-year-old woman in medical distress. The suspect was found in the basement. The injured were taken to hospital and, fortunately, are expected to survive. The 29-year-old man, meanwhile, remains in police custody. The Alberta Sheriff's Scan Unit has once again shut down a drug house here in our city. The property located at 94 Eagle Road was closed and boarded up at about 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning and will remain shut down for 90 days. Scan has been investigating the property and the owner since 2021 with a warning letter served to the owners earlier this year. Evidence throughout the year was adequate to apply for a community safety order to the Court of King's Bench to shut the property down. Officials with Scan are hoping this will put an end to violent and criminal activity within the premises and provide nearby residents with some relief.
People in this community have been enduring this property for 4+ years, excessive amounts of traffic to and from. They were seeing a high level of police presence attending this property, upwards of 85 calls since 2021. There's also violence stemming from this property. There's a community member that was bear sprayed in the alley behind this property. Our hope with this order and the 90-day closure, we bring a break to the community, but also send the message that activity like that in these communities won't be tolerated, and Scan members and investigators and police jurisdiction will continue to investigate and carry out actions like this if the situation warrants it.
Now, this is the third property here in Lethbridge that Scan has shut down since they expanded across southern Alberta a year ago. Additional closure conditions will remain in effect until November 19th of 2026. Well, it appears as though the rates of intimate partner and family violence are rising in Saskatchewan. RCMP say there were 890 incidents of violence per 100,000 people this year. Now, last year, there were 813 cases. Police say the numbers have jumped around 13% over the past 5 years. They say it's important to educate Canadians about such violence and that victims must be supported. Manitoba's NDP government laid out its priorities in a throne speech on Tuesday. Premier Wab Kinew says his government's priorities include improving health care, growing the economy, improving public safety, and making life more affordable. He says there are 2 new measures they're implementing.
The first is we're making good on the attempt to make grocery prices more affordable. We've been talking all year about taking action on grocery prices. In this document, we're announcing our plan to ban restrictive covenants for grocery stores in Manitoba. Right now, big grocery chains, when they set up a location in the province, can basically draw a circle on a map around that location and prevent there from being competition within that radius. We're going to end that practice here in Manitoba to save you money, but also to support small business and local grocers who want to be able to compete in those parts of our province. Saving you money on groceries, that's a major priority for us. And then, of course, as we promised in the election campaign, we are going to freeze Manitoba hydro rates for 1 year.
Kinew says his focus is on uniting Manitobans from all walks of life. The legislature is scheduled to sit on December the 5th. Well, this is National Collection Week for the Operation Christmas Child Shoebox campaign. Thousands of boxes are being collected and sent to children in need around the world, including those in Ukraine, Central America, West Africa, and the Philippines. Now, many of those boxes are filled with personal hygiene items, school supplies, and toys. Drop-off locations here in southwestern Alberta include those in Lethbridge, Taber, Fort Macleod, Claresholm, and in southeastern Alberta in Medicine Hat. Frank King is the News Media Relations Manager for Samaritan Spurs Canada, and he says there's still time if you want to pack a box online.
We try to make the Pack-A-Box online experience as similar to the physical traditional shoebox packing as possible. So you go to packabox.ca and then you select your gender, your age range. You're presented with a basic basket of items. You can add on to those items if you want. And then for each shoebox you pack, you can also upload a note and a photo. And then in the new year, when we get hundreds of volunteers at our Calgary Processing Center to physically pack those online boxes, we will download those notes and photos and put them in the appropriate shoe boxes.
And here in Lethbridge, the Park Meadows Baptist Church will be accepting shoe boxes this week for Operation Christmas Child. From now until Sunday the 24th, boxes with toys, school supplies, and hygiene products will be accepted at the church to send to children in developing nations for the holidays. The Lethbridge team says the outgoing support of the community has really helped support the lives of thousands of children around the world.
Operation Christmas Child has been around for a very long time. Lethbridge and area have for many years been bringing in boxes. It's been great to see. Recently, over the last couple of years, we collect about 3,000 boxes every year here. And so Park Meadows Baptist Church is the drop-off location where all boxes from this area will come to and get boxed up and sent through to the warehouse in Calgary. We like to put things like school supplies, toiletries, wow items, so toys in these boxes. Some of these boxes, or most of these boxes, are going to kids that have never received a gift. So get your boxes in this week because we have volunteers here to pack them up for you.
And all of those popular shoe boxes will be shipped out on Saturday, November the 30th. In an effort to support growing communities, the Alberta government is studying the feasibility of building a new reservoir on the Red Deer River. Government officials say expanding water storage capacity could help reduce the risk of future droughts and help meet growing water demands. The 2-phase multi-year study will explore the costs and value of constructing and operating the reservoir near Ardley. Officials say Budget 2024 allocated $4.5 million to explore creating a new reservoir on the Red Deer River at a dam site around 40 kilometers east of the city of Red Deer. The scoping phase is expected to be completed by the end of 2025. New research at Lethbridge Polytechnic is aiming to find antibiotic properties in regional plants that would tackle harmful bacteria affecting the poultry industry. Since 2016, Dr. Sophie Kerniers-Goldstein has been researching native plants that can be added to chicken feed to fight avian pathogenic E. coli bacteria, or APEC, which results in millions of chicken deaths each and every year. The research will look into native plants and their reaction to fight APEC. A potential breakthrough could greatly benefit Alberta feed producers in using a local resource for their production.
APEC is one of the main issues for the chicken industry. and the eggs farmers of Canada. In fact, at the beginning, I was focusing on Salmonella, and then they asked me if I could find something for APEC. So, my goal is that to find solution for this industry. The idea is that we collect plants from here, from Alberta, around the college, around Lethbridge, so not very far away. And the reason for that is also to say that it will be more sustainable to find something local than to import something like, there are other phytobiotics like thyme or oregano that you can import from China or countries that are far away. But if we could find something local, then there will be many benefits.
The project will be run by the Polytechnic's Microbial Research Laboratory and last about 2.5 years with a price tag of around $80,000. Well, the snow has arrived here in Lethbridge, and while it's here, drivers obviously want to avoid collisions. Now, is your car ready for driving safely this winter season? BCN's Heidi Echevarria was at Lethbridge Mitsubishi to gather tips for winterizing your vehicle.
Having our cars ready for the arrival of winter is imperative. Changing from all-season tires to winter tires and purchasing proper wipers blades are some of the tasks that must be done to be able to drive safely during the frozen winter month. The service manager with Lethbridge Mitsubishi Motors, Lance Alexandrovich, talks about how we can make our vehicles winter ready.
As the roads get slippery, we want to make sure our braking systems are working. We're making sure that our tires are going to grip the road. We're also wanting to make sure that when we start our vehicle, it is going to actually warm up. It's going to defrost our windows, get the vehicle ready to go, get the vehicle so that it's not going to leave you stranded on the side of the road anywhere. Without having the vehicle ready for the winter, you're going to potentially be stranded in your driveway with a dead battery. There's always the potential your vehicle's not going to be heating up. It's not going to be producing the heat required to actually defrost your windows, keep you warm, keep you safe on the road. Winter tires are a big thing right now with people getting swapped over. Winter tires provide some exceptional benefits over all season and all weather tires to keep you safe on the road. And while we're doing tires, we're also checking your brake fluid, the quality of your brake life, make sure that you're going to be able to stop with your winter tires on the vehicle and not have any problems. Making sure that your windshield washer fluid is rated for -40 and not too diluted with water is very important. That can cause a costly repair in your windshield washer system. Making sure that your fluids are all appropriate and topped up, your block heater is functioning normally, making sure that your heated seats are functioning for comfort, all very, very important in keeping people safe. If you're not comfortable, if you're not able to see, if you're not able to stop, you're going to have a very difficult time on the winter roads here in Lethbridge.
For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echevarria.
Well, we did experience a little bit of that white stuff today in Lethbridge and much cooler temperatures as well. And when it comes to snow for the remainder of the week, we're not out of the woods just yet. A full look at the weather pictures coming up. Well, it was kind of a slippery commute into work here today in Lethbridge. A little bit of the white stuff. More flurries are on the way tonight with a low expected near -10. Wednesday, clouds mixed with sunshine and a high of -9 is on tap. Overcast with the temperature remaining steady on Thursday of around -9 degrees. The snow returns on Friday with the mercury dropping 1 degree to about -10. Flurries and -9 for Saturday, cooling off with more snow and a high of only -14 degrees for Sunday, chilly. Monday, the snow should be tapering off and we should see things warm up to a balmy -2. Now, the average high for this time of year is +2 with an average low of -9. The record high was 22 degrees set back in 1936, and the record low was a very cold -36 set all the way back in 1921. The sun rose at 7:51 and set at 4:43. The days are definitely getting shorter. Let's see how the rest of the country is shaping up now for Wednesday. The west coast is once again looking more like the wet coast. Expect clouds and showers and 8 degrees in Victoria, rain and a high of 6 for Vancouver. It should be mainly sunny and 8 degrees in Edmonton on Wednesday. Partly cloudy and much cooler in Calgary with a high of only -6. Expect an overcast day and -5 degrees for both Regina and Saskatoon. Rain mixed with flurries and a high of +3 degrees for Winnipeg. Now looking over to the central part of the country, it should be partly cloudy and 10 degrees in Toronto, 1 degree cooler in Ottawa at 9 degrees. It should be mainly sunny and 11 degrees in Montreal on Wednesday. In Atlantic Canada, it'll be partly sunny and 8 degrees in Fredericton, clouds and showers and 8 degrees as well in Halifax, overcast and rain at 7 in Charlottetown, And at St. John's, expect cloud showers and a high near 11 degrees on Wednesday. One person has reportedly died and dozens more fell ill after an E. coli outbreak was declared from infected organic carrots sold throughout U.S. and Canada. The Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, along with the Food and Drug Administration, announced that organic carrots from several brands, including President's Choice and Compliments distributed by Grimway Farms, are being recalled. These carrots are sold throughout major grocery brands, including Walmart and Loblaws, and U.S. stores such as Target and Trader Joe's. The recall impacts organic whole carrots that were available for purchase from August 14th through October 23rd, and organic baby carrots with best before dates of September the 11th through November 12th. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is now warning people not to consume the affected products and throw out any carrots at home if they're suspected to be bought within that time frame. Canada's annual inflation rate hit 2% last month. That's up from 1.6% in September. Stats Canada says gas prices on an annual basis fell to a lesser extent in October compared with September. Rent prices, meanwhile, rose 7.3% from a year ago, while grocery prices went up another 2.7%. With inflation back around the Bank of Canada's target, the central bank is expected to continue cutting interest rates in the coming months. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 33 points on the day to finish at 25,010. The Dow was down 120 points to 43,268. The S&P 500 was up 23 on the day to 5916, and the Nasdaq was up 195 points to 18,987. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 36 cents to 69.52 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 2 cents to 2.95 US. Gold was up 66.92 on the day to 25.32.52 US an ounce, and silver was up 57 cents to 31.21 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.16 per bushel, barley's at $6.31, canola's at $14.36, and corn is at $7.52 per bushel. Live cattle December contract was up $2.48 to $186.58. Feeder cattle were up $2.43 to $254.25, and lean hogs December contract was down 48 cents to $79.55. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 71.70 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a new government report obtained by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says administering the federal carbon tax will cost taxpayers $800 million by the year 2030. According to the CTF, since it was introduced in 2019, it has already cost taxpayers $283 million. And according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the carbon tax itself will cost the average Canadian household up to $399 this year, more than the rebates. You know, the lead for the Conservatives over the Liberals has slipped somewhat, according to the folks with the nanos. Political commentator with the Toronto Sun, Brian Lilley, will have details for us momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is leaving his last summit he will attend with U.S. President Joe Biden and will host the next major summit of world leaders here in Alberta next June. Now, Trudeau was asked about hosting Donald Trump once again and what he may have learned, and will they get along well? To discuss this in more detail, a Sun political columnist, Brian Lilley, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, do you think Trudeau and Trump will play nicely together?
Well, look, they have to. They have to deal with each other. They are both Trump is the president-elect, but soon will be president again. The relationship is a bit different this time. Justin Trudeau is not the progressive global boy, progressive wonder boy for the globe anymore. For a while, that was kind of where he was. And Donald Trump, a bit of a pariah with world leaders. World leaders did not react the same way as they did in 2016 when Trump won 2 weeks ago. So, you know, the dynamic has changed, but they also have learned from each other. And what was interesting, Hal, is I'm watching the Prime Minister's news conference from Brazil, and the questions coming from the media make it sound like too many of our colleagues get all of their news from the Daily Show or the New York Times exclusively, or the worst parts of CBC. It's like they can only see Trump through the lens of his harshest critics. And that's a bad thing to do with anyone. You don't just listen to someone's harshest critics to take a measure of them. And so they sound like it's doom and gloom. Justin Trudeau actually sounded like he was pretty level-headed about it. He and Trump are obviously not on the same wavelength on a lot of issues politically, but he pointed out that, look, we hosted a G7 when Donald Trump was president. We actually got a lot accomplished, and we're able to work together on different issues, and you got to approach them. I will say this. I did an interview last week with James Villeneuve, who's the former Consul General for Canada in Los Angeles, was appointed in 2014 by Harper, served until 2018 under Trudeau. And he was there for some of the first meetings with US economic officials. And he said, what we have to do is don't go in and lecture, but go in and listen. And people can find the whole video on YouTube if you want to see it. But one of the stories he told was they went into a meeting about softwood lumber and just started lecturing and saying, well, it's going to cost Americans $4,000 more per house. And they said, we don't care. They had a reason for doing what they were doing. And so his advice is go in and listen to them, find out what they want, and go from there. Sounds like Trudeau's ready to do that. I'm not sure her media colleagues are.
Brian, our Prime Minister met with Mexico's president discussing the future of NAFTA. Now, this is something as well that's been on the heart and mind of Premier Daniel Smith here in Alberta. Did the Prime Minister offer any insight into the conversation about NAFTA?
He just said that it was a preliminary conversation, that Mexico is going to be looking for alternatives. Perhaps they'll have to explain why they're looking for so much investment from China. I mean, the real issue here is a concern mostly from the Americans, but shared elsewhere. I think including from the Trudeau government, but the business community in Canada, Premier Doug Ford, Premier Danielle Smith, is that China is trying to use Mexico as a backdoor into the North American market. And that was the problem with the steel and aluminum tariffs a few years ago. They were using Mexico and Canada as a backdoor, dumping underpriced product, subsidized product at below market costs into our markets to try and sell them into the US, and the Americans didn't like that. The Biden administration has already raised this issue. And if they're going to raise it, then you know that Donald Trump's going to go hard on it. So there's an issue that everyone acknowledges is there. What Mexico is going to do, well, that's up to them. Trudeau didn't give a hint one way or the other, but said talks were starting. Well, if talks don't go well, there's going to be an awful lot of appetite for saying, you know what, Mexico, we don't need you at the table.
Brian, the Biden administration has given Ukraine the green light to use American missile systems to strike into Russian territory. Now, it's a move that they made quickly on Tuesday morning. Now, as he was leaving the G20 summit, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did express concern that the statement by world leaders was not showing as much support for Ukraine as maybe they used to in the past.
Yeah, so I mean, this is obviously a big move by the Biden administration on their way out the door, allowing the use of these. They've been denying this for some time. The British also making moves in that direction, but there was not a lot of support for denouncing Russia and expressing strong support for Ukraine with some other world leaders at the G20. That's something that Justin Trudeau expressed frustration in. Of course, we've seen the response from Vladimir Putin already, changing the ground rules for how Russians can and will exercise the use of nuclear weapons. So very much a time or a time when tensions are escalating. So there's talk of Baltic underwater cables being tampered with by the Russians already. Lots of steps in play. But for world leaders who are waiting to see what happens when Donald Trump comes in, and some of whom are more friendly to Russia, there was a real hesitancy at the G20 to take too strong of a stand. Trump has been clear. He said he'll clear this up within a day. I'm not sure it will be a day, but he said that there will be an agreement and a peace faster or sooner rather than later. I tend to believe him.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly asked to join NATO. Now, Brian, if something like that happens, all of a sudden, we have to join forces with Ukraine, and we're going to see a third world war. Any chance, or is Ukraine any closer to joining NATO, in your opinion?
I'm not sure that that's going to happen under Donald Trump. The Americans are always going to be a big voice at the table around NATO. When this should have happened was 2008 or so. And I've spoken to former Canadian Defense Minister Peter MacKay, who was in the room. NATO was looking at bringing Ukraine on board then. Russia was not as bellicose as they are now. They weren't in the process of trying to annex parts of Ukraine. And it was the French and the Germans said no. They just said, absolutely not. This is not happening. Now they want it to happen. It may be the Americans that say no. Maybe that becomes part of the negotiation to get Putin to back off. I know the big concern with Ukrainian Canadians or supporters of Ukraine is, okay, Trump will get a deal, but does that mean they give up land to Russia? Gave up land to Russia with Crimea back in 2014. That never should have happened, but nobody had the wherewithal to stand up to Putin back then, and it just emboldened them. Something has to be done to Putin, because otherwise we will end up in, whether Ukraine joins or not. He does have eyes on Lithuania, Estonia. These are NATO allied countries. We have troops there already. Putin has to be stopped before he, as many say, tries to get the band back together with the old USSR.
Brian, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has called for one of the Randys to resign. Now, he's referring to Edmonton MP Randy Boissonnault. There's been some controversy dogging the minister recently, from questions about his business dealings, his company receiving government contracts, and Randy claiming that he was Indigenous. Now, there's word that Boissonnault has been sharing a post office box with someone busted for cocaine?
Yes, and it's an interesting case because Boissonnault says, "Oh, I don't know this Francesca Lalonde, don't know her at all," and yet his business, GHI, the health supply company, shared a post office box at a UPS store in Edmonton with this woman who's been renting it out since 2013. The owner of the box confirmed to my colleagues at National Post that, yeah, mail for GHI shows up here. In fact, people have come into this address looking for GHI because they think it's a street address. When I first heard about this, I thought, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Like, you're sharing an address. It's not a physical address where I'm in Unit 1 and you're in Unit 2. It's the same P.O. box. So there's obviously some kind of connection. Boissonnault's business partner, or now former business partner, I suppose, Stephen Anderson, formed a business with this woman who she's been busted on cocaine charges in Canada in the past. She was detained in Dominican Republic for months on a plane filled with cocaine. Now, it doesn't look like she's ever been convicted on those charges, but if you're part of two big cocaine busts over several years, there's something going on there. And that's not the type of situation that you want for someone who's a minister of the crown. So Pierre Poilievre asked for Randy Boissonnault to resign. During question period, Conservative MP Michael Barrett heckled Boissonnault with the nickname Cocaine Randy. And the Liberals rose on a point of order and said, you can't be calling honorable members that. Mike Barrett stood up and said, "Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the other Randy." And sat down. It was a bit of fun for everyone and a laugh, but Boissonnault's been trying to get out of all these claims that he was doing improper business dealings while he was in cabinet by claiming there's another Randy, and there is no other Randy. It's a completely ridiculous story. Once upon a time, Justin Trudeau believed you should be fired from a cabinet position over orange juice. Now he's allowing this to go on in his cabinet.
Wow. Now, speaking of the Trudeau government, they announced changes to Canada's immigration targets, Brian. Trudeau released a video explaining from his perspective what went wrong and how they're acting now and what they're doing about it. Brian, Trudeau blamed other people, while his critics say you really should be looking in the mirror here.
He, right off the top in the video, blamed bad actors and said fake colleges, which is interesting, and big chain corporations. I think that was a shot at Tim Hortons. using the temporary foreign worker program. But fake colleges, one of the colleges in Canada, in all of Canada, that really went wild on this was a school called Conestoga College in Cambridge, Ontario. And I believe they were over 70% of the students were foreign students. It's not a fake college. Was it wrong that it happened? Absolutely. But you know what? He is the one who runs the government. The government is the one who decides who gets in the country. And so just because the school says, oh, we've got this student, we'd like them to come in, you don't say yes. And on the temporary foreign worker program, there is supposed to be a mechanism in place called the labor market impact assessment. And you, Hal, say, I want to hire a temporary foreign worker. I can't find anyone. You've got to show that you tried to hire. You've got to show that there's nobody in the market that can fill the job. And they're supposed to analyze that and study it and then decide. We were handing out the permits at an unprecedented rate in both categories. I did the math yesterday. In 2023, we were handing out 77 international student permits an hour.
Wow.
That is more than one a minute. It's about one every 45 seconds or so. Just may as well just automate it. It was ridiculous, but that's on every front. Justin Trudeau tries to blame somebody else, and then he spends 7 minutes talking about it. But plus, he's always talking about he wants to stop misinformation and disinformation, and his claim about the fake school was misinformation. It wasn't a fake school, and it wasn't the other people's fault. It was your fault.
The Canadian dollar has recovered a bit after closing last week in the 70-cent range for the first time in many years. So, Brian, what's been driving the weak dollar? I mean, it's been great for exporters buying Canadian products, but not for importers or those of us who maybe want to book a holiday to Florida or Hawaii this winter.
Yeah, my upcoming visit to the United States will be much more painful than I would like it to be, but I'm still, blessed enough to be going. But it becomes a lot more expensive. Well, there's a lot of seniors on fixed incomes who are snowbirds. That becomes a real issue. But for the rest of us, it's everyday items. Cost of fresh fruit and vegetables in the winter months, those are going to be driven up. So why is the dollar falling? Why are we down at this level that we haven't seen in 5 years? One of the lowest it's been in many years, because of a couple of reasons. Interest rates went low faster than the United States. So some investors shifted their parking their money south of the border. Yeah, the Fed is cutting interest rates as well, but not as fast. So that becomes more attractive. Of course, the price of oil has gone down. That's great for us at the gas pump, but don't forget, never forget that we are still, to a degree, a petrodollar. And when the price of oil is so low, the dollar is going to go low. We have a weaker economy, lower productivity than the United States. There's a lot of factors going into this. But just as we're kind of adjusting to inflation, prices haven't come down, but inflation has cooled, thank goodness. This is cutting into our purchasing power. We are well behind where we used to be vis-a-vis the Americans when it comes to purchasing power compared to just, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
The latest national poll released by Nano says Pierre Poilievre and the Tories now have a 15-point lead over the Trudeau Liberals. Now, Brian, wasn't it closer to 20 points not long ago? And why is the lead shrinking?
Well, so some people are pointing to this poll as, see, this is proof that Donald Trump's win is helping the Liberals recover. But that's not really the case. Nick Nanos and his polling firm has rarely had the large lead that Leger and Ipsos and Abacus have had. He's always had a smaller lead, sometimes going down to 12 points, 11 points, up to 13, 15. So this is still within the range. And there's only been 3 polls that were conducted and released since the US election, 2 by Nanos, and I think it was 13 points in the last one. Now it's 15 points, so that theory is not working. And the other is by a firm called Ecos and a gentleman named Frank Graves. Well, to get at that, Graves had the Liberals leading in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So I think we see part of the problem with that poll. That is just not going to happen. Yes, the Liberals do better in Manitoba than they do in Saskatchewan, but not where they're going to be leading the Conservatives at this point. They would be second or third in every other poll. They also have the Conservatives leading with women. That is not happening in any other poll. So the Ecos one is an outlier. The Nanos ones are in the range that they are. We can expect Abacus out in a week or so. We can expect Leger at the end of the month, as they normally do. And then we'll get a better sense of, does Donald Trump's win help Justin Trudeau? My view for a year now has been probably not. Maybe a couple of points here or there would move, but it's not going to close the gaping chasm between the Liberals and the Conservatives.
Sun political columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us today from Toronto.
Thank you, Hal.
Well, what a crazy year it's been for colds, flus, and COVID, and you name it. But there is a way to build your immunity to protect yourself and your family from getting run down by sickness. Our guest today is Dr. Clayton Coganow, who is a naturopathic doctor in Lethbridge and the owner of Well Vitality Health Clinic. He's also trained in conventional medicine with a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science Kinesiology and did 3 years of research on radiation and cancer at the University of Lethbridge. It's great to see you again, Dr. Coganow.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. So it seems almost everyone you talk to these days in Southern Alberta has had more than their fair share of colds and flu this season, myself included in there, unfortunately. So naturally, people are looking for ways to build up their immune system to stay healthy, right? So how has it been for you at your clinic? Have you seen an increase in people struggling with health issues? What have you seen?
Well, I wouldn't say I see an increase. It definitely always increases around this time of year. It's pretty normal, maybe a little bit more influenza, a little bit more respiratory issues than the past few years. But I also feel like our bodies are just kind of building our immune system back up from kind of being away from everything the last couple of years. So it does take a little bit of time to sort of reactivate things and get your immune system used to these things again. And so it's kind of to be expected.
Okay, yeah, interesting. It's interesting that, how we were almost like on a pause there for a while. And now we're getting back into it, and here we are. So, there's a lot of talk that vitamin D is a good immunity builder. I mean, I've always heard about vitamin C, but tell us a bit about vitamin D.
So vitamin D is quite it has many complex functions in the body. One of them is the immune system. And so its primary thing there is that it's activating cells in your body, immune cells in your body, called T cells. And they're the cells that will recognize a virus or a bacteria. So when something comes into your body, it's those T cells that say, hey, there's something wrong. That sounds the alarm system. And it also activates another cell called a macrophage. And this cell particularly is a type of cell that will go and gobble up the virus or the bacteria and eat it and get rid of it in your body. So that's primarily its kind of role in the immune system, is it's upregulating those immune cells. I mean, it also has a direct antimicrobial effect, so it decreases the ability for these things to replicate, et cetera, and it's an anti-inflammatory. So vitamin D is really, it's a very popular one. It's quite safe, when taken roughly within, the recommended dose. But what a lot of people don't realize is that it also plays a significant role in calcium absorption. So you don't want to take too much of it because it can actually create a situation where you can have too much calcium going into your body. And it also breaks bone apart to allow formation of stronger bones in a roundabout way. And so it has many roles in the immune system, but it's also something that you don't want to just take copious amounts of, because it has multiple other functions in the body as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I've usually attributed it to like a sunshine. Like if you don't get enough sunshine, vitamin D is a perfect one to take for that. But it's interesting to know that it does so many other things as well.
Yeah. And yeah, most people in Canada are quite deficient in it. And we can test vitamin D. I think it's important to test vitamin D and kind of monitor it to make sure that you aren't taking too much as well. A lot of people are just told a lot of times that, well, you're probably deficient because you're in Canada, and it's true. Most of us are. But once you start taking it, then you also want to make sure you're not taking too much of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it's true then that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I know, yeah. For the most part, absolutely. Like there's a lot of things we can do to prevent. Sometimes you just get unlucky, I think, but I do think that there's a lot of things that you can do to help boost your immune system to prevent getting ill in the first place. Absolutely, there is.
Okay. Well, with that said, what are some other supplements that are known to help build immunity?
I mean, there's the ones that a lot of people have heard about, like echinacea, for example, and vitamin C. Those things are great at boosting immune system. Some others that maybe people haven't heard of that are more directly antiviral in nature would be like N-acetylcysteine. Quercetin is another one that actually doubles up as a great natural antihistamine for allergies as well. And then there's also another one that's fantastic is astragalus. It improves your white blood cell count. So it increases your defense, so to speak, against the viruses or bacteria that are in your body. There's so many that you can, try or list off. You don't want to get overwhelmed with taking too many things either.
Yeah, definitely. It can get a little bit, a little bit much sometimes.
A little overwhelming.
Exactly. And then, of course, we've had some colds that are caused by bacteria, and then others are caused by a virus. So I understand that maybe there's some herbs that are antiviral in nature. So
Yes.
can you maybe explain how those work?
Yeah, so like certain herbs, like for example, like garlic. It's the active component of the garlic. It's called allicin, and that like just specifically will inhibit replication of a virus and even deactivate enzymes which allow it to work properly. So there's quite a bit of research on different supplements that can not only stop a virus, but also slow things down so then your immune system can actually catch up and defeat the virus.
Wow, no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how much of a role does stress or anxiety play when it comes to immunity?
It's probably one of the biggest things that I see in my practice is chronic stress and anxiety, which very much go hand in hand a lot of times, specifically to certain hormones that get depleted with these things, cortisol being one of the main ones. And this hormone in your body lowers in response to chronic stress. And initially, your body will be able to handle that. But when your body doesn't have these specific hormones, then you're much more susceptible to getting viruses or bacterial infections, specifically when the cortisol drops. Initially, when your stress is high, your cortisol rises, it goes up. And that actually can improve your immune system, improve your defense against viruses. So chronic stress, chronic depletion of this hormone cortisol will lead to a lowering of your immune system and an inability to handle or deal with stress, which can lead to anxiety.
Oh, terrible.
And so supporting that system is a massively essential thing at helping to prevent viruses and boosting your immune system.
Yeah, so how can we support that then? What are some things that we can do to reduce that stress?
Well, it's difficult. Everybody's different. There's the obvious sort of answer is like, well, do things like exercise and yoga and meditation, etc. I try and tell my patients just to try and look at what's on their plate and take something off their plate if they can, because a lot of times it's life gets very busy and it's very difficult to just say, oh, go do this or go do that. Like you're putting something more on by doing that. So some people can do that and other people they can't. And so I think for people to kind of learn that like it's okay to review what you have on your plate and say no and be able to take things off your plate is a fantastic way to reduce your stress, manage the anxiety, as well as doing things that help, like exercise and, yoga, meditation, etc., those things.
Right, definitely. What about a proper rest? I've heard that that could make a huge difference as well.
It goes hand in hand with stress. Stress, I mean, and rest. If you're resting more, sleep, for example, is a massive one that plays such an important role, because it's such a massive stressor on your cortisol system, that if you're not taking things off your plate, if you're not decreasing how much load you have on your body, then it's going to be very difficult to maintain a healthy immune system.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes when we're so stressed and anxiety ridden, it is hard to get proper rest. It's hard to sleep.
They're directly related. You actually need energy and energy systems to fall asleep. So it's for a lot of people, when they have insomnia or difficulty sleeping, they also have massive issues with their cortisol and their hormones and their energy and their immune system. And the only way to truly fix the sleep is by helping their energy systems, helping their immune system. And there are things directly, that can help benefit sleep, but you almost have to treat it from a dualistic manner. You have to treat both their energy systems to give them more energy in order to then fall asleep.
Yeah, I know. It's a complicated system. Do you recommend melatonin? I mean, I've heard some people say don't get dependent on it.
Yeah,
but-
so I mean, melatonin, I find that melatonin, most patients that come into me have already tried melatonin because it's more well known, and so melatonin is just a hormone, secreted at sleep by a gland in your brain called the pineal gland. And this is something that is more important for the circadian rhythm. So it's more important if you have like jet lag. And in those cases, it works amazingly well for most people. But what I find is that when people come in and they've, most people, even if they haven't tried it, it's rarely the one that's really indicated. I find there's a lot of other sleep support supplements that we can try and even combine together that will help people with sleep more than melatonin.
Okay. Yeah. Talk to your physician, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pretty complex system. And unfortunately, it's one that we can't test.
That's too bad. Thinking of maybe what we're putting into our bodies here, are there certain types of foods that can help build our immune system? I mean, we've always heard that there is. And on the flip side, what would be the foods that would weaken immune system?
So the ones, I mean, yes, absolutely. There's, foods that are going to support the immune system. Anything with lots of color, fruits and vegetables with lots of color, berries full of antioxidants. They take pressure off of your system, off your body. Citrus fruits tend to be quite high in vitamin C, which boosts your immune system. So like oranges and kiwis, etc., things like that. And then there's foods that produce a lot of stress on the body. So like, for example, alcohol, it puts a ton of stress on the liver. It decreases your ability to process and assimilate nutrients. Foods that are high in sugar are very inflammatory, so they put a lot of pressure on your body that way. Foods that are high in saturated or trans fats are also very difficult for your body to process, and they create a lot of oxidation. And so what your goal is with food is to take pressure off of your system, not to put more pressure on your system. And again, it comes down to stress. Stress isn't always, mental, emotional. Sometimes it can be physical as well. And in the case of food, that's exactly what it is. So, from my practice, I tend to also look at a lot of digestive tract stuff, gut health stuff, because what your goal is to try and take as much load off the body, as much stress off of the body in general, because it will all help.
So many things to think about when we're putting our bodies under stress here. There's so many factors that go into it. Now, I know that your clinic offers something fairly unique, this IV therapy to boost immunity. Can you maybe quickly explain how this works?
Sure. So there's different, so intravenous therapies. There's different ones that you can do. I would say the most common for boosting the immune system would be like an IV nutrient bag. So that would have like a higher dose vitamin C that you could take, then you could take orally, and then B vitamins, magnesium, calcium, basically a multivitamin in there. Now, the benefit of the IV, because all these IVs, and people will tell you like, well, they're water soluble, you'll just pee them out. And that's very true. They are water soluble, and absolutely you do that. But it's actually the difference between taking a supplement by mouth orally is that when you take it by mouth, it has to go through your digestive tract, which most people that I see have horrible digestive systems that we have to work on. So you lose absorbability there. So you're not absorbing everything. And then it goes into your bloodstream to your liver first. And then your liver will actually remove a lot of the vitamin that you took orally before it goes to all the cells of your body.
Fascinating.
So by the time you take a supplement orally, you're reducing your dosage, you're reducing the amount. Or in the case of, for example, vitamin C, you're unable to take a massive dose because you'll get irritable bowel from taking a high dose of vitamin C. So intravenous therapy is beneficial because it bypasses both of those systems. When you IV someone high dose vitamin C, it doesn't go through the digestive tract. We can give you a much higher dose, and you absorb 100% of everything we give you. So every single cell of your body gets all of the vitamins and all of the minerals that you wouldn't have got just by taking an oral supplement. So what it does is it ramps up all those metabolic and cellular processes. And then your body says, okay, now we'll get rid of the rest. So it is true that you do eventually get rid of it, but it's how it's working in your body that's so massively stronger than just taking an oral supplement. So it is very beneficial.
That is really fascinating. I bet people just come out of there feeling like $1 million.
It's one of the best things we can do for our immune system and energy systems. Yeah.
So interesting. It's been so interesting as always talking to you, but we are out of time. So I thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Clayton Cogonut is a naturopathic doctor in Lethbridge with Well Vitality Health Clinic. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.